I like to call the Toronto real estate market socialism with Canadian characteristics. It's like, you know, when you're driving under the Gardiner and you look up and there's a bunch of cracks everywhere and you're thinking to yourself, is this thing gonna collapse? And instead of actually fixing the issues with the foundation, all we've done is just paint circles around the cracks. Well, that's exactly what the Toronto real estate market is. It's a bunch of short-term thinking, band-aid solutions, and we're not allowing the free market to work. Now, it doesn't mean you need to be afraid of the real estate market here in Toronto. It just means that you need to be aware of the risks, just like with any other investment. And with that being said, if you need help navigating this tricky real estate market, feel free to click the link below and book a no obligation call to see how we can help with your real estate needs. Okay, so let's talk about some of the things that have happened just in the last 4 or 5 years that we would have never seen coming even 10 years ago. The government, seemingly out of nowhere, brought in 2, 3, 4 million people into this country, the highest growth in population that this country has seen in the last 3/4 of a century. Now, obviously, with the increased population, that's going to put a huge upward pressure on prices of homes, both for renters and buyers. This massive immigration led to huge increases in the pre-sale and even the resale condo market. And yes, inflation and low interest rates, but the main driver was that millions of people were coming into the country and landlords saw an opportunity to make money. And now 4 or 5 years later, even the Liberal government's like, oh, okay, maybe we brought in too many people. And we're saying, no, things are slowing down. And some of these investors are now losing money when they're pulling out from their purchases that they made 4 or 5 years ago. It's not like if every immigrant came into the country and all we had to do was supply them with an I Love Trudeau t-shirt, right? We can match supply with demand very easy if that were the case. But no, homes take years to fund and build in this country, if not decades. So think about it. There's just so much red tape with building and these projects don't get built until, 5, 7 years later. How can we predict the demand for housing in this country if the government just changes their immigration numbers? It's nearly impossible. You're either going to create housing shortages, which we have, or you're going to create like an Evergrande situation in China with these massive ghost cities or massive ghost apartments where nobody lives in because there's just no demand anymore because no one's coming in the country, right? It's like it's just so hard to let the free market do its thing. And like you look at Toronto and there's just so many skyrises getting built, 40, 50 stories. These are all condos, but like eventually there's not going to be that much demand for these condos. People are going to want, even if you're an immigrant, if you're a Canadian, everybody wants a bigger home with like a backyard, right? That's like a natural human need. So this is going to further drive that price gap between condos and freehold homes. But on the flip side, it's not all bad news, right? Immigration has been fantastic for homeowners, for Canadians, because it's like basically the equivalent of the government creating this huge stimulus package like they did in 2008, bailing out the banks, bailing out the car companies. It's the same thing. Same thing happened in Canada. By essentially bringing in millions of people, the government has bailed out the real estate market in Canada. And that, as everyone knows in Canada, the real estate market is pretty much our stock market. And outside of immigration, another huge thing that the government has implemented is the foreign buyer ban. This happened in January 1st of 2023. And essentially what this means is 中国人买不了了. And as realtors, we can actually see who owns properties. And let me tell you, a good chunk of the downtown Toronto condo market is owned by foreign Chinese. Now, these people, they're not doing anything wrong. They're playing by the rules, right? There was no foreign buyer ban prior to 2023, so they bought. And probably they bought because they're trying to stash cash away from the CCP. Fair enough, right? And then the government of Canada comes in and says, no, you can't buy anymore after 2023. This ban is until 2027. So, and what's interesting is they don't have to sell. So now we've removed a huge segment of buyers from the market, which will put downward pressure on the market. And then it's like, no one knows what's really going to happen because this ban is only until 2027. So depending on who gets elected, maybe this ban will continue, maybe this ban will be lifted, no one knows. But that's a huge unknown factor in terms of where prices are gonna go going into the future. And this foreign buyer ban creates a very, very unusual supply-demand dynamic. It's very, very strange, right? And I think it's not really going to apply to freehold homes as much. There's still ample demand for that. Everybody wants a freehold home in the long run, right? All my buyers of condos are saying, you know, eventually I'll buy it and I'll rent it out, but I'm not gonna live there forever. It's not my forever home. So the demand for freehold homes is still there, which is why you have that price gap. But yeah, this foreign buyer ban has pretty much been a major contributing factor in the decimation of prices in condos. And I wouldn't have seen it coming 10 years ago. And that's the risk of the variable of immigration in this market. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know which government party is going to be elected. We don't know how many people are going to be brought in, how many PRs are going to be given out, how many people are going to be given a path to citizenship, whether the numbers go down or up. That is just a factor that is purely out of our control. And we need to go into real estate thinking that there are just certain factors that we cannot foresee or that we do not have control over. And also, they just voted 21-1 in favor of waiving development fees for rental purposed housing. And essentially that means you can't buy these condos, they're only for rentals. So then, you know, on a block, you're gonna have some condos which people will be able to buy and then some condos where people won't be able to buy. It's just crazy. And same thing with rent control, this thing that the government has implemented. Buildings built and occupied after November 15th, 2018 don't have rent control, which means if you have a tenant in there, theoretically, you could just increase the price to whatever you want. But if the building was built before that date, then the government says, no, you can only increase the rent by a set amount per year, typically 2.5%. So then again, it's like on the same block, let's use John and Adelaide, for example, 99 John will not be rent controlled, right? And then right across the street, literally the buildings are like this, right across the street, 295 Adelaide is rent controlled because it was built before 2018. What? Oh, and it gets better. There's more rules, guys. More rules. I'm not even gonna touch on all the rules and all the rules that are gonna come and like, you know, so many circles. Everybody's just drawing circles on the cracks in the foundation, but the bridge is gonna collapse, guys. The bridge is gonna collapse. Another rule, remember, the interest rates. Another arbitrary thing, seemingly. I know they say they base it off of data and inflation and whatever, but come on. Are they really? You know, right? Like, yo, think about it. Like 4 or 5 years ago, they told us that interest rates were at historic lows and they weren't gonna rise. And then boom, the Bank of Canada increased rates by 8 times in a row. So another factor that is out of your control if you're looking to play the game of real estate in the Toronto market. And speaking of the Bank of Canada, what about inflation? Another factor that's outside of your control. Yes, inflation year over year from 2024 to 2023 is 2%, which is great. That's the number we want. But they've already done the damage. We're never going to see pre-COVID prices again. They've already kind of screwed everyone over with the devaluation of the currency, which again was outside of your control, but that affects real estate so much. But, you know, what can you do? And these are just some unpredictabilities of the Toronto real estate market. It's like, yo, we can't have completely unregulated markets. I get that. You need a referee. But at this point, it's like we're playing a game of basketball and the refs keep changing what a foul is in the middle of the game.
And it became personal with me.
But that doesn't mean you can't win. It just means that instead of winning by 5, you gotta win by 20. And again, investing in anything is risky. Not investing is risky. Everything is risk. The S&P is at an all-time high. It hit 6,000 not too long ago, and I think it might crash maybe in Q1 2025. Not financial advice, right? But if you invest your money in the S&P, it might crash. If you invest your money in crypto, SBF might steal it. So with every asset class, there's an element of risk. The Toronto real estate market is no different. You just need to be aware of the risks and you need to be aware of the variables you cannot control. But hey, more risk, more reward, right? And that's it for this video. I wanted to make this video because it just kept on coming into my mind how ridiculous the market is and what our solution is, right? It's like, you know, one or two of these rules I understand. You know, if foreign people are buying the shit out of our country, yes, we need to stop it. But why do we let it happen in the first place? What are we doing here? You can't just change it and then not change it and the ban only extends till 2027 or interest rates or all of these factors. It's like, what are we doing here? And they keep on adding more. And then the mortgage rates, you know, up 1.5 million uninsured. That's going to kick in this month or in December. So it's like, more and more of these rules are coming into play, and it was just kind of, you know, in the back of my mind, and I thought I had to make a video about it. And it's going to be interesting watching this video back in 2 years to see what else these geniuses come up with. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.